And welcome back. Hopefully you had a stimulating networking session there. I would like to provide one other public service announcement. This afternoon for lunch, there's a restaurant list that's available on the front table if you've not grabbed one of those already. Lunch will be on your own during the lunch period, so you can have that for a little advanced planning. For the rest of the morning, prior to lunch, I think we have an exciting lineup for you. First off, we're going to have Brian Wilcox from the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, and he's going to be speaking on innovative concepts for NEO exploration. No doubt, this is all about gleaning the best and brightest and strongest ideas, and I think the creative catalytic effect of his speech will be quite good. Next up, we'll have Clive Neal from Notre Dame, who leads the Lunar Exploration and Analysis Group, the League, and he will be speaking on using the moon to facilitate exploration of NEOs. And then finally, we'll have, we'll have Kathy Laurini, who's our Exploration Systems icon of international engagement. She is going to be speaking on international framework for human space exploration. And finally, we'll have from Japan, from JAXA, Professor Kuninaka, who will be giving us a Hayabusa mission update. So I think we got an exciting lineup for the rest of the morning. So without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Brian.
Thank you, John. To make that work. Okay, I want to talk to you this morning about a process of innovation that has been developed called the Blue Sky series of meetings. And this is a set of brainstorming sessions that goes back a number of years. It's facilitated by Ken Ford and his folks at IHMC. You already heard from Tom Jones of IHMC this morning, and Tom showed you a little bit of what is called a concept map. And I won't show you one because it'd just be an eye chart. You couldn't really read it. But it has, we transform hundreds of sticky notes that come out of these various parallel sessions of brainstorming and transform them into a network. And that network then helps you understand what are all the issues associated with, in this case, exploring NEOs. So that has been done. There was a session back in January exclusively devoted to human missions to NEOs, and then follow-up sessions, both email sessions, but another face-to-face meeting in June. One of the ideas that has come out of the Blue Sky series is what is now known as the Space Exploration Vehicle, or the Multi-Mission Space Exploration Vehicle, MMSEV. It's gone by some other names previously, but it's basically a two-person capsule that can carry 4 in an emergency. It has a phase change material such as water, almost certainly water, for thermal control and for radiation protection from solar particle events, solar proton events. And it has a couple of suit ports that allow you very rapid ingress and egress to the vehicle without significant loss of gases. And Mike Gernhardt, who is here, has been the champion for that since its inception at one of the Blue Sky meetings, and it's been developed by the Blue Sky meetings over that period, as well as with the heroic efforts of Mike and others. So that that's one of the things that the Blue Sky team has wanted to capitalize on. You can certainly do some interesting other things once you have that foundation. You could do things like connect 2 such vehicles with an RMS type arm, and that arm would allow you to do some things that you wouldn't necessarily otherwise be able to do. For example, we don't know if there's going to be regolith on the surface of these very small objects. The larger objects almost certainly have regolith. The smaller objects, we're not sure. Itokawa, the resolution of the imagery really wasn't good enough to determine whether there is regolith there. There's certainly gravel-sized particles. But if there is regolith, you don't want to kick that regolith up as you explore, because the lifetime, just the orbital lifetime of that that cloud would be certainly tens of minutes and possibly much longer than that. So one approach to preventing such an event of kicking up a cloud like that would be to have two vehicles like this on the end of an arm that would allow the one vehicle that's further away from the surface to use its reaction control system to prevent, so that it's not shining its rocket thrusters onto the surface in immediate proximity. The other one then has a thing to react against by way of the arm. It's able to react through the arm and both maneuver in the immediate vicinity of the asteroid, as well as do sampling operations and other things that might require forces to be exerted on the asteroid. And one of the things, of course, you might want to do is to anchor. If you can just grab on, we show a couple of arms on these vehicles. These are notional arms, but you might also want to anchor permanently. Basically, put essentially a rock anchor into the way a climber would do. And if you run the numbers and you look at what it would take to set a rotary percussive drill to drill enough of a hole with a rotary percussive drill, not dissimilar from what you'd go down and buy at the hardware store, it only takes less than a kilo of propellant to hold it down long enough to get yourself a nice hole that you can anchor into, even in solid rock. Now, if it turns out there is a deep layer of regolith, you could use dart guns and harpoons, that type thing. And certainly many people have discussed that possibility. But if there is no regolith and there's only the rock surface, you could use the propulsion from the other MMSEV to hold you down long enough to get a drill into it. And of course that drill would serve double duty as a sampling device later. Once you had one of the vehicles anchored, then the other one is basically a giant end effector. So now you switch roles, and one of them has used its reaction control system to hold the first vehicle down long enough to anchor, and now that vehicle is anchored, and you can now explore an area equal to the radius of the arm with very precise motion, with no reaction control requirements, with no serious potential for kicking up a cloud of dust. So anyway, that's one of the ideas that came out of this Blue Sky series. Another is to have a centrifuge, and of course centrifuge is an old idea, but the thought that you might be able to have something other than microgravity, both on the cruise and while you're in the vicinity, is of great interest. There is, of course, a debate in the community over whether there is bone and muscle loss, whether that's inevitable in microgravity. There are certainly people who believe that if you take your vitamins and you're quite diligent about your exercise regimen, that you can eliminate essentially all bone and muscle loss and other deleterious effects of microgravity. However, there are other people who don't believe that. And until that issue is resolved, it certainly is prudent to ask the question, would it be possible to have an artificial gravity provided? And would you, is there any benefit to it? What are the repercussions of that? Turns out that with a few hundred meters of tether and a few tens of meters per second of radial velocity, of tangential velocity, you can introduce quite a substantial equivalent gravity field, and you can then operate that system certainly with no concern about the deleterious effects of microgravity. And all you have to do is from time to time you have to undergo this 10 meter per second or so delta V required to get in and out of the rotating reference frame. Another possibility, the last bullet there, is to use the Node 3 off the space station. Now, these missions are going to occur at about the time that the space station is near retirement, and so one has to wonder, is it possible to use assets from the station as part of your mission complement? And certainly the Node 3 allows you to dock a couple of these MMSEVs to it, as well as perhaps other things. Another series of ideas that was explored by the Blue Sky is to add inflatables. So here on the lower picture, you see the node 3 has been used to connect to an inflatable. In the upper one, you see that inflatable is tapered somewhat, and more detailed analysis than came out of the Blue Sky indicated that tapered shape is very helpful in fitting it into the launch shroud. The way it folds up and packs, you've got rigid floors embedded in there, and those fold up kind of like an origami structure, and so you're able to do things that just wouldn't necessarily be possible especially if we don't have a very large heavy lift launch vehicle with a 10-meter shroud like the Ares 5. As it currently appears that the 10-meter shroud may elude us for some time. Packaging into the launch shrouds that we do have available for these long missions is something that makes the inflatables very attractive. So time really doesn't permit me to go into either the whole concept maps or all the different approaches, but suffice it to say that many interesting ideas, there are almost no new ideas under the sun. What we typically do is we reinvent old ideas that go back, anywhere from 5 to 50 years, but we collect them together in a way that allows you to track to understand the traceability through the different requirements of the mission, and then once you have that concept map, you can say, well, wait a minute, this isn't a complete set. We've got an instance of something, but there are lots of other instances that you can imagine for accomplishing the same thing. So it allows you to complete out. So you do the brainstorming session, and you get that concept map, and then you look at each branch of the tree and say, well, of course, there are many other branches that we could add to that same tree in a parallel construction. And so with that, I want to... First, I want to acknowledge the people who put together the graphics, especially Thomas Rusek, who did all the graphics for this and worked tirelessly over the last few weeks to make all that possible, as well as the Blue Sky team, which are too numerous to mention. Thank you very much.
Good morning. As you may be able to tell, I'm from out of town, actually from the Midwest, so somewhere around there. I just wanted to give you an update. I'm still the chair of the Lunar Exploration Analysis Group, and I know that the moon is now really a four-letter word and passé, so we decided to rename it Neo Prime. Being the nearest near-Earth object with a much less than 180-day round-trip mission time. So something to consider as you move on with this, actually. So what I wanted to do is to give you an update of what has actually been going on in the lunar community with regards to actually using the moon as an exploration asset. We have developed over the years a lunar exploration roadmap, and you can't see as themes, goals, objectives, and investigations. And we have 3 themes within that, basically centered around science, feed forward to other destinations, and sustainability. And these things will resonate through the roadmap if you get a chance to look at it. And what we have felt in our roadmap is sustainability is the key, and it doesn't matter whether you're looking at the moon, but if you want to kill a program, make it unsustainable. Don't have a long-term goal for it. So something that we've looked at, there are transition strategies. And we've heard this morning from Tom Jones with regards to using NEOs to go to Mars, but you've got to have that transition strategy built in to begin with. Otherwise, you may end up getting stuck there. And this is something that, in terms of the old program developed in the last 4 years, is that we built into the roadmap was to actually develop that transition strategy as well as commercial on-ramps that will allow the private sector to basically take over so that any infrastructure that's built up or technology that's built up is not abandoned. And again, international cooperation is going to be critical, and we've actually seen that on the moon with the number of international missions that have been going to the moon to actually understand what the issues are and undertake lunar exploration. And I'm really intrigued to hear about the Hayabusa update at the end of this session. That's another thing that emphasizes the international cooperation that is beginning nicely and needs to continue. So if we look at the initial version of the roadmap, the feed-forward theme was very Mars-centric. Using the moon to go to Mars was the old adage. We've now got something a little different. And you can see there that in terms of our feed-forward theme, it was human-focused in terms of getting humans to Mars and using the moon to actually accomplish that. So Mars risk reduction value and lunar platform value were the two criteria by which different objectives and investigations were prioritized. Now, something may be in the roadmap that you think, well, why the hell would you go to the moon to do that? Well, it has a low priority because it can be done, say, on Antarctic. So in using that, we met earlier this year to actually examine this feed-forward theme, and there are basically 3 goals, and we've actually started to prepare a third one now, which is use the moon to prepare for future missions to small bodies. Now, this is, again, using the moon to go to small bodies, not try and understand everything we know about small bodies. So there's going to be a lot of interaction with the small bodies analysis group. Mark Sykes is down here from that, representing that group, and we had a lot of help from Paul Abel when we were going through this from Johnson Space Center. So again, this is what we've started to develop, and one of the things that comes up is what are the pros, what are the cons, and I point to the con down here, the big one, and that's the gravity. Operating on the moon is very different because of its size and its gravity well. However, there is a harsh space environment. It is close, proximity to test things. International cooperation is critical for the moon. It's also critical for NEOs, and that has already begun. Dust regolith issues are on the moon as well as they will probably be on NEOs. And again, in examining this, we found that in looking at the moon, either robotic or with humans, there's going to be a similarity in some technological developments that will be needed in order to ensure safety and productivity. So again, we've used similar criteria, small body mission risk reduction value, in terms of developing this particular goal in the feed-forward theme, and also the lunar platform value. Do you really need to go to the moon to do this, or would it be cheaper and better done elsewhere? So, and we'll go through a number of objectives and investigations in order to actually evaluate that. So the overarching goals for this particular goal here, or the overarching goal for these goals, ability to operate on a geologic surface, operations on airless bodies, operating in an extreme radiation environment, and then long-term duration mission activities. And these are things that have synergies between what we're talking about with NEOs and also with the moon. So technology developments that came up, jumped out of us, was sampling and preservation technologies for volatiles, ices, and regolith. These are needed for the moon. These are needed for NEOs as well, especially in terms of science and when you're characterizing different NEOs that are out there. Robotic sample return and curation technologies. Again, I'm very excited to hear about the Hayabusa mission and achieving these robotic sample returns. Remember, the Soviets did this in the 70s from the lunar surface, but we also need very different curation technologies if we are to actually bring back some of these volatiles and some of these ices and maintain them in their pristine state. And then radiation protection technologies is a big one, and we've heard that already this morning with regards to protecting humans so that they come back with the same number of limbs that they went out with and haven't grown anything new in the meantime. So again, we look at different lighting conditions that can be used to improve EVA. You look at the little picture over here, we've got a much smaller body compared to the moon, but we have very different lighting conditions, which may change depending upon spin And again, we look at the perceptions when you're on or close to the surface under different lighting regimes. And then we have a dust environment, electrostatic issues, and here's the classic sketch from the Apollo 17 about dust levitation. And these are issues that plague both the moon and some NEOs, potentially. Thermal regimes for doing EVA. They're going to be more constant on the moon, but in terms of shadow to light, certainly tests will be done and would be very useful in terms of both robotic and human endeavors, and especially on the moon if we're dealing with prospecting into some of these permanently shadowed regions that L-Cross demonstrated, some of which contain quite a wealth of volatiles for ISIU. And then robotic-human interactions could be very important as well. Not only for exploring for science, but also exploring for in-situ resources. Getting into those places with robots that it may be potentially very hazardous to put humans. We know again from the LRO and L-Cross missions just how cold some of these permanently shadowed regions are. And trying to send humans down to do prospecting, it may be actually mitigated by having a teleoperated robot go down there. And the potential for teleoperations then becomes quite large. And then mitigation of suit tool failures and wear and tear. We've got airlock issues and seal issues. Again, this comes back related to the dust, but the technology is required to actually achieve the safety and the risk reduction apply to both NEOs and the moon. So again, the radiation environment on the moon is much harsher than it will be on this planet or at station. So we're trying to understand the effects, and we've seen already from LRO, it doesn't matter where you are in terms of the Earth's magnetotail, there doesn't seem to be that much of a difference. So the moon becomes quite a good testing ground for these types of technologies. And again, in situ resource utilization, prospecting will be initially very important. We've prospected from orbit on the moon, but I noticed in Jay Jenkins' talk about the lunar lander. These things that I've been talking about could be applied to and tested on that lunar lander mission that's in the X-Prim, X-Prep, X something or other. Hoping it won't be X, period. So again, we have these technologies to be able to use teleoperations to get into a permanently shadowed crater to explore and prospect for in-situ resource utilization. Would be highly advantageous to be done on the moon. It's close by. You could do it from Earth. Whereas if you were at a NEO, maybe you would need to be done from the nearby capsule. Oh, too far. In closing, the moon is an exploration asset in the view of the Lunar Exploration Analysis Group. We're not all wiping our teary eyes because of the latest president's budget, but we see this as an opportunity to actually help with solar system exploration. And it's great to see the moon back as part of the solar system again. And we hope that the asset that we have close by can be used to facilitate deeper solar system exploration. And just to conclude with the things that we feel here that are most synergistic, we have technology development for both robotic and human science and exploration, protection technologies for human missions, and again, systems integrations for human missions and operations on other planetary surfaces, no matter where they may be. Thank you.
Okay, that was a tough act to follow, a Midwesterner that introduced the topic of international cooperation so effectively with his charming speech. Thank you for that, Clive. You've heard a lot over the last several hours about international cooperation, and I think it is a commonly held belief that when we take humans beyond low Earth orbit, we will do it in an international effort with international crews and international missions. What I'm going to tell you about today is an emerging framework in the international community intended to help realize that vision, and how this emerging framework is playing a role with NASA's strategy in preparing for these human missions beyond low Earth orbit. Specifically, I'm going to tell you about the Global Exploration Strategy. It is a document developed by 14 space agencies. Doug mentioned it this morning. NASA was one of them, published in 2007. It reflects a common vision for how humans and robots can, in a synergistic fashion, explore destinations that humans can one day expect to reach. And it's a very important reflection of a common international vision going forward. Can I ask for a show of hands of how many people have read the Global Exploration Strategy document? Very good. If you haven't, I encourage you to do that. I'll tell you a little bit more about it. The International Space Exploration Coordination Group, or ISEG as we call it, is a group that was formed at the culmination of the development of this global exploration strategy, because participating agencies recognize that in order to work towards realizing this common vision, we needed a coordination mechanisms to allow discussions to take place. And I'll tell you a little bit more about the ISEG. And lastly, I will talk about the Global Exploration Roadmap, which is an emerging ISEG product now, which is really helping to take the global exploration strategy to the next level. If you've read it, you know it's a general vision of where humans can one day travel and work, but not a lot of specifics about where you go, when, why, those kinds of things. So the Global Exploration Roadmap work that's now starting is intended to help host those discussions and lead to ultimately a plan. And near-Earth objects, NEOs, are reflected prominently within the global exploration strategy and represent there's a consensus that they are primary targets for someday sending humans. The logo in the middle shows you the 14 space agencies that contributed to the development of the global exploration strategy. The purpose of this chart really is to say what we in ESMD are trying to establish is working through this international mechanism with our future international partners to develop a common long-term vision and discuss the strategic questions such as how do we leverage our investments and technologies to enable this common long-term vision, this future that we think about, and what kind of near-term partnerships are available to help us contribute to the ultimate realization of that vision. So whatever comes out of the discussions on NASA's priorities and path going forward, seeking a common vision and using near-term opportunities to work towards realizing that vision is the core of our strategy. So the Global Exploration Strategy, just a couple of minutes on that. As I mentioned, it was developed by 14 space agencies. It calls for a globally coordinated effort in human and robotic exploration, recognizing that no one nation can do it on their own, and benefits will come to all of humankind. And it calls out specific benefits in 5 thematic areas. Advancing science and technology. Advancing scientific knowledge is extremely important in the international community with respect to human spaceflight and the influences that future partners have brought to us in the developing the global exploration strategy and framing the ISEG so far in understanding the importance of humans advancing scientific knowledge is contributed quite a lot of, it has influenced our thinking significantly. The sustained presence of humans in the solar system and the value of understanding how humans can live off the planet. Can they? How can they use resources? How can we enable it in a sustained manner? Economic expansion, understanding where there are opportunities for new markets, for new economies as we push further out into the solar system. Global partnerships are very important. How can we, by learning to work together, we understand each other better, we trust each other more, we communicate better. And lastly, inspiration and education. We share a common desire to use investments in space exploration and human spaceflight in particular to inspire the young people to study math and science and engage the public in these interesting missions. And you'll hear a little bit more about that. The GES doesn't call for a monolithic program. It doesn't call for a specific implementation strategy, but it really recognizes that this is a long-term effort, and we need to be evolutionary and flexible in how we define the path forward. And the GES does call for this coordination mechanism, the ISEG. And I've put the website for the GES, so you can find it off the NASA homepage if you haven't seen it. So the ISEG is a multilateral forum that, as I said, was formed to advance the global exploration strategy. The intention, what we've come to find is ISEG is an extremely effective forum for doing that early pre-coordination, early conceptual exploration, by sharing our concepts and plans and exploring concepts together about how we might meet our own objectives. ISEG can help bring together a common understanding of a good way forward. So basically, the way the ISEG works is members work in ISEG specific activities based on their interests. Any of the 14 agencies are welcome to participate in any ISEG activity, and agencies do based on things that are important to help inform decision making within their agency at the time. And they work together on products that are intended to help inform agency decision making in a coordinated manner. So it's not a governance model, it's not a governance structure, it doesn't take decisions that are binding for any agency, but by collectively working on products, it allows agencies to make individual decisions based on their resources, on their plans that help them contribute towards a globally coordinated space exploration effort. So the principles are listed here. I won't go through them, but the idea, the participating agencies are committed to making it an effective forum. It's not a theoretical talk fest kind of a forum. It's really intended to promote the kinds of dialogue that will help agencies make decisions that they need to make now and develop plans that they want to develop now. And it's open to any agency that's interested. So the 14 participating agencies welcome any additional agency that's interested in joining. So a couple of examples of key ISEG products. The ISEG reference architecture for human lunar exploration is a major one. I think in 2008, when NASA and other agencies were busy exploring lunar exploration concepts, it was agreed that it made sense to talk about how we might integrate our plans and how we might, where there were synergies. So we started an effort to examine our objectives for lunar surface exploration. And from there, we found a number of common objectives that allowed us to feel confident that a coordinated surface exploration plan was possible. So the effort resulted, it was about an 18-month study, resulted in effectively an international design reference mission for how to explore the surface of the moon that reflects the objectives of participating agencies, the strategic considerations such as affordability and sustainability of participating agencies. And we had hoped at the time we initiated the effort that would be a good basis to start talking about, okay, how do we start forming the partnerships to make this happen? Now we recognize it as still a very important contribution to the overall global exploration strategy. We believe that humans will go back to the moon at some point, and this work will form a good basis for reigniting the planning processes internationally. In doing this reference architecture, we also learned a lot about the value of ISEG. We found that it was important and worthwhile to share information on our plans and work concepts together. It helped everybody get a common understanding of the challenges, everybody get a common understanding of the strategic issues facing us in realizing this vision, and how we might start to take concrete steps towards addressing those issues. The common goals I mentioned came out of the analysis of our individual objectives. So a lot like what we're doing here today and tomorrow, formulating NASA's objectives for sending humans to NEOs. This will serve as an input to us, for an input by NASA to an international dialogue, and we will meet with our international, through ISEG, we'll meet with our international counterparts to see what their objectives are, how can we find synergies, how can that allow us to talk about conceptual architectures, conceptual plans for moving forward. One thing that I didn't mention with the reference architecture was a thing a very important component of the lunar planning we did was the importance of the robotic precursor phase. One of the things that the international community working through ISEG believes is that when you talk about human missions to these destinations beyond LEO, you need to include the robotic precursor activities as part of the architecture, part of the discussion. They provide a lot of benefit. They ensure that you're getting the most out of the investments in the robotic precursors or scientific missions if there's an opportunity to gather data from instruments on a scientific mission. So thinking about precursors as an integral part, and that was something that came across also in the goals. And lastly, public engagement. There's a common belief among ISEG that we can do a lot better in engaging the public, sharing the rationale. It's a lot of the themes wrapped up in participatory exploration that we're talking a lot about now, but how can we share products and leverage our investments? So lastly, I'll talk a little bit about the roadmap. So the roadmap is intended to be an illustrative, high-level plan of missions towards these GES destinations, Moon, NEOs, Mars. It's intended to reflect agencies' plans. So right now, we don't have concrete plans for sending humans beyond low Earth orbit. We're formulating those plans. This roadmap will be a tool to help us in the international community work towards a common understanding of the right missions for humans, the right steps for humans to take as we go beyond low Earth orbit. So the initial, we intend to put an initial version of the roadmap out by next summer. The first version of the roadmap will reflect what agencies have concretely planned. And so you'll see a lot of robotic activities, and you'll see space station and the importance and the stuff being done on space station to enable exploration. But the dialogues that will go on in support of that will help inform future revs of the roadmap. So as we start to understand together the benefits of Moon before NEO's Moon, what can Moon bring to Mars, destination sequencing, what does that mean to capabilities, those kind of discussions would take place internationally within the context of building this roadmap. And so hopefully the roadmap will serve, the vision is it will serve as a tool over time as it increases in its maturity over time to bring agencies, every agency will see their policy and plans reflected in their activities in the roadmap, and it will serve as a tool to bring our plans probably closer together in a more coordinated reflection of our desire to go together beyond the low Earth orbit. So in summary, I think a pretty effective framework is emerging in the international community. ESMD is engaged. Many of you in this room have participated in ISEG activities so far, so you have an understanding of the power behind the mechanism and the intent there, the rich belief of the international community that we need to do this together, and this workshop will be really important to help NASA engage in an international community in preparing for how we might go to a NEO, when, why, and the like. So thank you.
I see. Understand. Thank you. In your time, wild screen, and then we'll give you a warning. Okay, I see. Thank you. So my name is Kuninaka. I'm very happy to have the opportunity to present Hayabusa space mission to you. And then okay, so this page is, I'm sorry. So this page is show you the Hayabusa space mission. So you may know this is the robotics unmanned space mission. So spacecraft is a very tiny one. Total weight is about 500 kilogram, including the propellant and the fuel. And then you can see pair of solar array made of the triple junction cell. It generates the 2.6 kilowatt electricity at the near Earth orbit. And then so it was launched May 2003 from Kagoshima Space Center. And then so 2 years later, we executed the rendezvous around the asteroid Itokawa. And then so 2 months, during 2 months, we executed the remote observation. And then so last month, and then so final month, November 2005, we executed the landing on the surface of the asteroid. And then so at that moment of the liftoff of the asteroid surface, Hayabusa caused the fuel leak. And then so that we lost communication to the Hayabusa during the 6 weeks. Fortunately, communication was resumed, and we executed the troubleshooting. And then so that the original plan, Hayabusa return mission, Earth return was the plan 2007, but we prolonged it from the 2010 this year. And then so this pages show you the closest snapshot of the asteroid Itokawa. You can see a black shadow, that is the Hayabusa's shadow projected on the surface of the Itokawa. And then left-hand side, you can see the small bright spot, that is the target marker landed on the asteroid surface. And then so, in any case, this picture was taken by Hayabusa itself. And then so, I have already said to you, we had a lot of the troubles in the space operation. There are the hydrazine malfunction of the hydrazine thrusters. We lost 2 of 3 reaction wheels. And then so, in order to resolve this situation, we executed the several operations. For example, in order to resume the attitude control, we use a lot of techniques. There are delta V maneuver by ion engine. I'm sorry. Delta V maneuver by ion engine with the thrust vector control for attitude control, and we use the solar pressure torque and a single reaction wheel for non-spin stabilization for the bias momentum method, and a cold gas, xenon cold gas jet for attitude control, so on. And then so we targeted the Hayabusa to Earth again. And then so last year, November 2009, we executed the 7 years flight operation of Hayabusa, so that the ion engine showed the fatigue, some of the fatigues. And then so November 2009, thruster D was shut off, so that the in order to keep the final delta V, we executed the following the countermeasure. And so we installed the 4 ion engine. We call thruster A to thruster D. And then so in health neutralizer A and the ion source B in the good health conditions are connected electrically, and then we regenerate thrust force again in the cross-connection operation. And then so using this method, finally we managed to guide Hayabusa to Earth. And as this page shows you the guidance scheme to WPA. WPA is the Woomera prohibited area at the Australia. End of March, we executed the continuously delta V operation, I'm sorry, ion engine. And then so from April, we changed it to the operational mode. We call it TCM, Trajectory Correction Maneuver, TCM 0 to TCM 4. So originally we targeted on the Earth rim above 600 kilometer Earth for flyby. And then so this TCM3, this is a very critical operation. After the permission of the Australian government, we executed the target change from the Earth rim to WPA. And then so we successfully executed this TCM3 using the ion engine. And then so before Earth reentry, capsule was separated from the mothership Hayabusa. And then so this page shows you the guidance operation in the continuous delta V. This page shows you the horizontal axis shows you the calendar date, and the vertical axis shows you the absolute V parameters. And then so gradually approaching to the Earth. So that is the history of the targeting history on the V plane, and extrapolated orbit on the geocentric space, so on. And then so this is the same explanation to you. And then so this page shows you the summary of ion engine. And then so horizontal axis shows the calendar date from the launch to the Earth return. And then so red line means the accumulated operational time of ion engine, and the green line means the consumption of the propellant gas of xenon. Before the launch, we installed the 66 kilogram xenon, and then gradually reduced. And finally, at the moment of the Earth return, we have enough propellant gas, around 20 kilograms. And then so total operation in the 7 years operation, accumulated operational time of ion engine is about 40,000 hours, and we ion engine generated the 2.2 kilometer per second for delta V. And then so this is the photograph shows you the reentry and the recovery operation at the Umera. And then so that is the fireball. And maybe that is at the moment of the rupture of the xenon propellant gas and the oxidizer tank rupture. And then so that is the so-called the destructive reentry. And then so next day of the reentry, we find out the landed capsule. You can see that is a very neat one. And then so red capped people, he is the Australia quarantine officer. And Australian government has some concern about the so-called the Andromeda strain, or an asteroid alien from the ruptured capsule, so that he was very interested in the status of the capsule. But fortunately, this is the perfect EDO, so that we successfully recovered the landed capsule. And then so this figure shows you the landing operation. And then so that is the predicted landing dispersion ellipse. Or successfully, we landed capsule center of the this ellipse. And then so discrepancy between actual landing position and predicted one's less than 1 kilometer. So in that sense, that is the perfect EDO operation. And then so retrieved capsule was conveyed to Japan from the WPA. And then so inside the capsule, we found out the about order of tens of small particles inside the canister of the capsule. And now they are cataloged in the curation center. So next page is a very interesting one. So this pages show you the resolution. So before the Hayabusa mission, we have a way to observe the asteroid using the telescope. In this situation, so observation resolution is the astronautical unit. And another way, we have a radar observation. In that case, the resolution is 100 meter. And then so Hayabusa executed the rendezvous, or another way is a flyby. At that moment, the observation resolution is order of 1 meter. And the Hayabusa executed the touchdown. At that moment, we take a very precise picture on the surface. That is the 1 millimeter resolution. And then so we success the sample return. In that case, the micrometer resolution. And then so if we succeeded to the atomic observation on the sampled particle, that is the order of angstrom. In that sense, I would like to conclude the sample return mission. Sample return technique is a very powerful way to analyze or promote to promote the science on the solar system. And then, so this is the final page. Hayabusa space mission was deeply helped by the international space communities. For example, the seamless tracking through the NASA DSN, and OD and EDL analysis by JPL NASA, Ventry airborne observation by SETI, and the color analysis by Stratcom, and the kind advice to ground recovery operation by Astromaterial Research and Exploration Science NASA, and Australia government and Australia DOD, and so on. On behalf of Hayabusa project, I would like to express my gratitude to the for their collaboration. Thank you very much. And so finally, I want to show you the fireball movie of the fireball. Please swap to the movie file. Mother sequence Hayabusa. So they are the fragment of the spacecraft, and you can see that the very, very straight white of the re-entry capsule. Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Great stuff, more to come. So with that, that'll conclude this morning's sessions. And what I'd like to do is we will adjourn for lunch. Again, per the list that we have outside on the table, hopefully many of you have it already. We have a restaurant list of those local establishments that will get you back here. We're going to resume promptly at 12:15, and so we will be starting speaking at 12:15, so I encourage you to please make it back prior to that. But I do have one important announcement to make, just as a heads up. We've recently gotten some reports from the AP and CBS of a small plane crash in Alaska, southwest Alaska, I believe. It had 9 persons on board, 5 of which are believed to be deceased on that airplane. Were former NASA Administrator Sean O'Keefe, as well as former Senator Ted Stevens. And it is also believed that Sean O'Keefe's, one of his sons, is on the airplane. Currently, that's the baseline information that we have. Our prayers and thoughts go with them. There's believed to be a doctor and some people on the ground, but it's in a very remote location. I believe they made it to them last night, but the rescue and recovery operations are being hampered by inclement weather and challenging terrain and remoteness. It's approximately 325 miles southwest of Anchorage. So I don't want to, I don't have any more details than that, but I thought folks would want to know. So with that, thank you very much for your great listening this morning. We have another exciting lineup coming this afternoon. Again, we'll start at 12:15 promptly. Thank you.